Okay, hello. My name is Sam, my pronouns are they, them, and welcome to my office. So, right now it's January 30th. I've still got another, the rest of today, it's 2:30, and tomorrow to finish reading for January. So, I'm gonna do my January wrap-up and my February TBR. Now, my January wrap-up will include 2 books that I am on track to finish today and tomorrow, so they're not done yet, but they are definitely going to be. One of them, I've got 10 hours left to finish the audiobook, and another one I've got another 100 or 200 pages to go, but I'm finishing my physical read today, and I'm finishing my audiobook at work tomorrow. So, wrap-up's a little funky, but then we'll get into the February TBR, which I am so excited about. Let's get into it. So the first book that I actually finished this month was A Crown of Burning Light by Kendall Genz. I was a beta reader for it. I really loved it. I don't remember exactly when it comes out. I can't remember if it's out right now or if it's coming out in March. But I'll double check on that. It was really good. So it was about Ally, who is the crown royal in this empire that was cursed quite a few years ago, and at least a couple hundred years ago. And so the only way to break the curses for both her empire and another empire is for the first heirs of each of those empires to get married. So that is her and this prince, Warren Driscoll. He's Fae. He's this is definitely here's this love interest who's a couple hundred years old, and then here's this I think she was 21 or just turning 21. But neither of them particularly want to get married. So they go out on this quest to find this very specific resource to break the curse. So I really liked it, honestly. I gave it 4 stars. And the thing that I feel like people need to know about this one is that I think it's a fantastic beginner fantasy. It was less than 300 pages. It had good world building. It had interesting characters. I really liked Warren as a character. I thought he was really interesting and complex. And I just didn't think it was overwhelming in any capacity. You're getting the beginnings of a fantasy. It's definitely going to be series, but it's not as overwhelming as, say, a Sarah J. Maas can be, or as intimidating as her books and a lot of other fantasy books are, because fantasy romance can sometimes be chunky. And I love a good chunky book, but, it's intimidating for people sometimes. So this is one that, say you are someone who's been reading high fantasy for 10 or 12 years. Maybe this one's not going to impress you that much, but I think it's a fantastic choice for people who are trying to work their way into it, or just want something a little bit lighter in between really long books. I thought it was a great option. The second book I read this month was actually an audiobook. It was Wildcard by Marie Lu. So I finished out that series, and I really liked Wildcard more than I liked Warcross. So Warcross is about this VR reality game and hackers and, people trying to take the life of this big old CEO of this company, and he's in his deluded little fantasy world of trying to do the best thing possible. So this is the second book in that duology, where I don't want to spoil it, because honestly I think that it was good. I think that the reason I liked this more is it stepped away from the video game focus that Warcross, the first book, had in it. That one was focused on the game itself and the mechanics of it and building yourself up as a player in that. This one really focused on the dramatics of what happened at the end of Warcross and the big gasp moment. Wildcard really focused more on the relationships between characters and the drama and the twists and the turns, and a lot of ethical, philosophical questions. So I liked this one a lot more. I gave it a 3.5 star. Ultimately, I'm glad that I read it. So the second physical book that I finished this month was actually Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. And I gave this like a 3.25. So I don't see, the problem is, like, I don't really entirely remember what happened at this point in the series. Like, I really like Leigh Bardugo and her writing, but it was definitely her first series, and it was definitely like in the early 2010s. You could tell a lot of the tropes are there. You know what? So I know that people talk about the Darkling as like we love him as a love interest or we hate him as a love interest. I don't even want to talk about him as a love interest. I want to talk about him as a character. I think he's a really interesting character. He's really messed up. But the way that he interacts and like the things that he does, I just thought that he's such an interesting character to look at, but I don't want to look at him in a romantic aspect at all. I think he's a bad person. I think he's a bad character. Just because I think a character is interesting doesn't mean that I automatically think that they're a good or likable character, because obviously he is not. But then we go over to the other love interest, who is Maul. I don't like Maul as a love interest. Not in the slightest. And that's not to say anything particularly negative against him. I have like kind of mediocre feelings about him. I don't think that he is supposed to be the love interest. Honestly, like this whole weird like love triangle thing that was going on with this is just not the vibe. It's not the vibe. I want to know the story. I want to know what Alina does. I want to know what Maul does. I want to know what the Darkling does. But I don't want there to be any romantic tensions between any of them, because I don't feel like any of them really make that much sense as love interests. So I'm going to read the third book. I'm going to read Rune and Rising. But so far, the series is ultimately lackluster, and I feel like it's because we spend so much time focusing on the romance when the romance isn't that good. So the fourth book that I read was actually an audiobook, and it was Legend by Marie Lu. I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. But I wanted to read it because it was like on my list of read 2023 of my backlog for 2023. And I own that entire series, and now I just know that I don't like it. Again, an early 2010s dystopian. You know what? It wasn't for me. And I don't even really want to talk about it. I respect Marie Lu as a writer so severely. I don't feel the need to like run her name through the mud with this series when it was obviously really popular when it came out, and it was with the trends, it was with the times, it was something that really boosted her up. I respect her so much. I'm going to continue to read her books. It's just that series was not for me, and now I can unhaul it and give it to someone who's actually going to enjoy it. So yeah. Okay. So now we're getting onto the good stuff. The first half of this month was not very good. The second half of this month, very good. All the White Spaces by Ally Wilkes. 4.5 stars. So this is a like psychological thriller. It is about a trans man who decides to go on a journey to the Arctic in, I think, the 1920s. This is like just after World War I. And he stows away on this expedition to the Arctic, to the Antarctic, sorry. So he ends up going with Harry, who helps him transition and like find his place and learn to be like more comfortable in his skin with on this expedition with all these other men. But things ultimately go wrong once they get down there, and some creatures start to hunt the expedition once they hit the South Pole. And they hunt by the lights of the aurora. So I read this for our January MB book club. I loved this. This is a library copy. I'm going to have to buy a physical copy. This was a terrifying horror in exactly the way that I wanted it to be. Like, it was very up in the air of, oh my god, is this actually happening? Is this horror? Are people just going crazy? What is going on? Is something hunting them? Yes. The answer is yes. And, like, you know it from the start that something's hunting them, but it makes you question it on and off. It makes you question yourself as a reader, even though you know what's happening. Like, this was everything. It was terrifying. I cried a lot. I am the kind of person who, when I am scared, I just start crying. I cried so much. I loved to see the trans rep. I loved the relationships and the boundaries between Jonathan and Harry, and like all of the things that we got to watch Jonathan have to go through to like assert who he is as a person, despite how other people see him, and the trauma and the PTSD of World War I. And oh my god, it was so good. It was so well written. I have to read more by Ally Wilkes. I loved it. Loved it. Obsessed. The reason why I put it down to 4.5 stars and not 5 stars was the pacing towards the beginning. I thought it was a little bit slow. I thought it was a little bit tedious at times. It didn't stop me from reading it, obviously, but the beginning is fairly slow. The end really picks up. So, loved that. So, the next one that I read was Soul of the Deep by Natasha Bowen. I have been procrastinating reading this for so long. I don't know why. I read Skin of the Sea in 2021, and it was one of my like top 10 of 2022. And you know what? Soul of the Deep, it was an audiobook. 5 stars. 5 stars. I adored this in every capacity. I thought it was so good. It's about Simi, where she ends up. She ends up in like this deal that doesn't really work for her. She's fighting between like going back to her life as a Mamiwata or her life like on land as a human with her romantic interest and her parents. And it's this battle of what she wants, what she thinks is necessary, you know, and her understanding like who she really is. And you know, the lore in this was just amazing. Like the way that everything is described, it's just truly incredible. I really loved this. But Simi's character development is just amazing. And at the end, this still sticks with me, even though it's been like probably like a week and a half now. What she says to Kala, I think that's his name. I hope that's his name. Is just like, I need you to realize that I'm choosing you, but I'm also choosing me. Those things aren't two separate things. You know, in the way that she prioritized herself and her needs and all of that, while also expressing like her care and her devotion and her commitment to their relationship. It was just so good. It was so good. I have to buy it. I'm pretty sure where it left off, I think it leads us to a third book, and I really hope so. So, 5 stars. 5 stars. First 5 stars of the year, Soul of the Deep by Natasha Bowen. Fantastic. Then I got to Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, which I did an audiobook for. And I gave it 4 stars. I liked Bloodmarked more than I liked Legendborn. So one of the things that I had to keep reminding myself while I was reading this was that Brianna was just a child. Like, she's only 16. And I feel like that's, to an extent, what does this book injustice, because, like, I'm imagining everyone being a little bit older, you know, not that much older, but being, like, between, like, 18 and 20. And I have to keep reminding myself that she is not of that age. She is a teenager. She is just doing her best. So I feel like her age in comparison to the age of the people around her is something that kind of throws off the book just a tiny bit. Like, this is not an actual, like, real complaint, and this totally could just be a me thing. And every time I reminded myself, like, she's 16. Give her a break. My brain was like, oh yeah, okay. She's 16. She's not an adult. Of course she's making these decisions and doing things this way. This totally makes sense. So that could entirely just be a me thing. And it didn't have anything to do with, like, the star rating whatsoever. But I just want to put it out to everyone in the universe, because I don't know if anyone else had this problem, but she is 16. She is a child. But she's in a college setting, so it throws me off sometimes. But I really liked it a lot. I thought that her character development was top tier. I thought that Cell is my favorite character. He is fantastic. I think that he is so interesting, and he's also one of those characters who, it's like, he's not totally good or totally bad or anything. He just is, he's not a human, but he's a person, and he's complicated and interesting, and I really liked him. And I also really liked that we didn't have to listen to that other dude, the main love interest. God. I don't even remember his name. I don't like him. The son of the son of Lancelot, like one of the main characters in this. I didn't really have to deal with him that much. And thank God. Because he could take his self-righteous ass and go. I don't actually hate him in any capacity. I don't find him to be that interesting or that compelling. I feel like he kind of lacks in that department, because everyone else is so interesting and so compelling. She is, Alice is, Cell is, William is. Like, they're all so interesting. And then you've just got, like, that guy. And you're like, oh. Well, what do you bring to the table? Nothing. So. But I loved it. I loved the story of it. I loved the way where she took it. She took it in a very, like, political way of, like, here's how it was kind of actually meant to be, and here is what people have changed it to gain power and control, and here's what it could be from this side. And, you know, you've got so many different perspectives to look at. And then you've got Brianna, who is just like, well, no, I don't like any of your options, so I'm not going to follow any of them, which is totally fair, because all of the options kind of suck a little bit. So I respect her as a character. I respect Cell as a character. I really liked it. Love the audiobook narrator. Fantastic voice. Ultimately, like, one of the things that sticks out for me was William just being like, you think that we're trying to save you because you're, like, the ancestor to Arthur, but we're trying to save you because we love you and you're our friend. And her coming to the realization that, like, she's not just important as a pawn in the game, but she's important to these people in her life who value her and respect her and love her. Like, that was such a beautiful moment. It was an intense moment, but it was wonderful. And I loved it. So, let's get on to the 2 that I'm finishing in the next 2 days. And I know that I'm finishing them, so it's fine. We've got Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. I don't know what I want to say about this, honestly. So it's about Tareen, who's a soldier. She is a sand, and what a sand is a Quasali, native, or someone who was stolen from one of the colonies that the Baladarians took over and have harmed. They steal children to educate them and train them to be soldiers in the army, so that's what a sand is. And she gets blamed for the murder of a black coat, and they try to put her to death until she bargains with the Baladarian princess Luca for her life, and she becomes assistant to Luca, who is trying to discuss and negotiate like peaceful terms with the Quasali rebels, which you can't negotiate peaceful terms with someone that you have colonized. I think that Luca is kind of naive in like the harm that her and the Baladarian Empire are doing. I think that she's really, I think that she's choosing to not actively be aware of the harm that she and her country are really doing. As a princess who should rightfully be queen, I think that you should be a little bit more aware of your surroundings and what's going on. But you know what? I'm not royalty. I don't know anything. And we're at a point in the book where Tareen has just pulled a really shady move. I think that her intention was understandable because her intention was to put the sand soldiers first, to help them, to save them so they don't have to be on the front lines. That's ultimately not how it worked in any capacity. The way that she went around it, she put way too much faith in someone who never deserved her faith. And I'm not saying that Luca deserves her faith, but, you know, she went around things incorrectly. So I'm kind of curious to see where things are going to go from here, because I don't know. I don't know. So far, I'm really liking it, though. Like, I can imagine myself giving this, like, maybe a 3.5 to a 4 star. It just kind of depends where it goes for the second half of the book. And I'm going to finish reading that today. Once I'm done filming and editing, all I'm doing is reading for the rest of the day. And then I am also reading Raybearer as an audiobook, and that's by Jordan Ifueko. And I'm also really, really enjoying it. Like, I think that this is kind of fantastic in every capacity. But this is about a lady who wishes for a child to go and kill the Raybearer, like to get in with his inner circle, and once he is in love with her and she loves him, that her entire life goal is to kill him after that fact. But she has to learn to love him. Like, she functions as a normal human and does all of these things and has feelings like she's a normal human. But she knows that command deep down that she has to murder him once they are both entirely in love with each other. I'm probably around halfway through with it, and I love it. I love it so far. I think that this is a super interesting and really awful story. Like, you as a mother, you're just like, this is the thing that I brought life, but I'm gonna command it to do something that destroys it emotionally. And I just, oh my god. And they're just kids. Like, they're just kids. She gets to the palace to start vying to be part of his group of 11, like, when she's only 11 years old. So she's literally just a child. And she has the weight of this awful command on her that she feels, like, deep inside her soul. And she's trying desperately to go against it, but she also kind of knows that she just can't. And he's just kind of like, I love you, why won't you go with it? And she's just like, haha, sorry, bye. That's all I know from it right now. But I'm really enjoying it, and I also really like the audiobook narrator. So that was my wrap up. I will have read 9 books. I will have been at 9 books. Which is really exciting. I want to average around 10 books. So I would say this is going fairly well. Let's get into what I am planning on reading for February. I've only got a couple things that are really important on my list. One of them, I have a handyman romance that I'm beta reading for. I gotta get that done pretty soon, and I'm really excited about that. So that's one. I'm not really supposed to talk about it or give details on it, but I'm going to express that I'm excited about it. And then I have 2 books coming in that I definitely want to read, and I'm so excited for them. I called my mom the other day, and I was just like, Mom, I'm sad. She was like, okay, order yourself some books. I was like, okay, that's fine with me. So the one that I'm most excited about is I'm in Love with Mothman by Paige Lavoie. It's a Mothman romance. I don't know anything else about it, but it's a Mothman romance. So, like, so what I know about it, because I follow the author on Instagram, is that it's like a cutesy Mothman romance. Like, it's not just straight smut, which if you watch my Kendall Unlimited Gone Wrong vlog, you will know that I did not enjoy the monster smut. I did not like it. So I'm excited to have, like, just a cutesy, like, fun romance that has a monster in it. And then I'm also receiving, which I'm super excited about, Always Only You by Chloe Lies. I know that this is the second book in the Bergman Brothers series, but I'm gonna read it anyway because it's like a hockey romance between, like, I think, like, one of the managers or, like, the assistant to a professional hockey team, and she is autistic. And I've heard that this has fairly decent autistic rep. I mean, I guess we're gonna see. But I was just kind of interested in it. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. Let's just go with it. Let's follow your hopes and dreams. And then I also have to read my MB Book Club pick for the month, which is The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta, which is a rom-com with magical undertones set at a queer bakery with an adorable NBMC, according to this. So the theme of the month of February is just going to be cutesy romance. Like, not hardcore smut in any capacity, just cutesy romance. Which I'm here for. So, those are the only things that I actively have planned for the month of February, which works for me. Anything else that I get in, I'm just kind of going to get in. I'm sure that I'll need some fantasy to break up all of the romance. But yeah, I'm so excited for it. I'm really happy with how January went, despite January being a garbage month. This was the worst start to a year that I have ever had. But we're going to pull it all together, and we are going to have a great February. I just bought my partner her first ever 3D printer, so soon I will have little roctopuses to show everyone. I want a little army of roctopuses. Roctopi? I don't know. But yes, so that's where we're at. I hope that everyone else's January went better than mine. I hope that everyone's February goes really well. We got this, and I will see everyone next time.